NBA writer Keith Smith, Yahoo Sports, covers the NBA at Keith Smith NBA. The Sixers have a 2-game lead with 6 to go. Brooklyn, 43-23. Sixers have the tiebreaker. So if Philly loses twice, they would still win the East. And, of course, the Bucks are now 3 back in the loss column. So it looks like a pretty good shot that Philly will be the number 1 seed. Does it matter? As a text message said earlier from one of our listeners, Keith Smith, the team with the number 1 seed in the East hasn't even made the finals the last couple of years. So is the number 1 seed all that important?
This year it is, because that means you only have to beat one of Brooklyn or Milwaukee, assuming you take care of your own business in the first 2 rounds. And that's extremely important. You can't overemphasize enough that you don't want to have to go through both Brooklyn and Milwaukee in one thing. Those are going to be extremely tough series. And then on the other hand, you're going to be risking losing. You're going to be worn down. By the time you get there for whoever's standing on the other side, you may not have enough left. So I think it's really important to be number 1. And also, Philadelphia's been one of the few teams in the league. There's only a handful that have been, really pretty good at home this year. And I do think that also matters.
So of the 3 teams, Philly, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, who benefits the most from being who needs that number 1? Like, in other words, if one of these teams is number 2 or 3, if Philly's 2 or 3, do they not have, you kind of count them out, like, unless they're number 1? Like, I look at it, if Philly's not the 1 seed, they ain't making it to the finals. They're not beating the Nets and Brooklyn consecutively. So of the 3 teams, who has to get that 1 seed to make it to the finals?
Yeah, it's either Philadelphia or Milwaukee, I think. I don't think either one of them is going to win a game in the second round against Brooklyn and then go into the East Finals against the other one and win when they are the lower seeded team. So I think that, really, either one of them. I think Brooklyn, just based on the fact that they have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, they've kind of been there, done that. James Harden game seems to really kind of travel pretty well. I'm not quite as worried about them as I would be the other 2. But on the flip side, that Nets team hasn't really been very good on the road this year. So we'll have to see, what they ultimately are able to do with that. But I do think it is, I would say that it's, Philly or Milwaukee need it more than Brooklyn does, but just slightly.
I'd like to get your opinion on the fact that, as you mentioned, that Brooklyn, we don't know enough about this team. Not cohesive at all. Can they just jump into this with these 3 guys, do you think? Do you see James Harden coming back, being ready to go, and kind of getting themselves through a first round and then hitting the ground running in round number 2?
Yeah, what's interesting is I thought that was why they might have really needed the 1 seed, because I think for the Nets, they're going to have to use that first-round series to somewhat play through things, figure some things out, especially at the end of games. I mean, I know James Harden came out today and said he hopes to play before the end of the regular season, but you're really talking, maybe 2-3 games at the most? And you don't even know that those games will be close or that they'll even be on the floor at the end of those games. So that's where it gets really tough. That's what you almost kind of needed, was a position where, all right, we can get these guys in there and we can see what it looks like at the end of a close game, because that's the only way you're going to be able to figure that out. You can't simulate that. That's not something you'll get out of a practice even. So that's where I think, that first round series for them, whether it's Boston, Miami, Atlanta, or New York, it's just going to be a little bit tougher in the first round versus the 8 seed's pretty much going to be a walkover team. So that's why I think Brooklyn would have done well.
Do we think that, Keith? Do we think that Washington, right now they're the 10, but what's to say they don't win 2 games in this play-in tournament, get the 8 seed? Do you want to play Washington if they're the 8?
Yeah, I'm not overly worried about it. I think when you have enough days of practice time to plan for them, and now that's where those teams will be at and have a good sense of it. And then you're going to see them 4 to 7 times in a 2-week period. You're going to be able to game plan for them fairly well. Now, yeah, Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, they can make it interesting. Maybe they win a game or 2 by themselves and you're in a series you didn't expect to. But if you're Philly, Brooklyn, or Milwaukee, you're going to be, I think they'll be able to lock in enough defensively for Philly and Milwaukee to take care of that team. And then I don't think the Wizards have nearly enough defense to handle anything the Nets will throw out.
That game was wild last night, 135-134. You're thinking, man, you get stuck in a game like that in the playoffs against that team. And you know, if you're the 8th seed playing Beal and Westbrook, you'd much rather get faced against what Charlotte brings to the table, or even, you know what I'm saying? Even, I mean, Miami or Boston for that matter. I guess the way Tatum, he's been playing, you see a lot of Boston. Has Tatum really kind of turned the corner the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, he has big time. You don't want to play Boston or Miami because your thought there, if it's either one of those two teams, is one, they've been there, done that. They've made runs, both of those teams. They know what it takes to win in the playoffs, and there's a little bit of a sense of you get them when they're finally healthy, which both of those teams seem to finally be turning that corner here, just a couple weeks out from the playoffs. If you get them then, all of a sudden you're looking at them like, man, even if you beat them, they're going to extend you in that series. You're going to have to really work to knock out either one of those teams. So you'd rather have you'd definitely rather have Charlotte or Indiana or even Washington in that position. I think, quite frankly, you'd rather have Atlanta or New York than Boston or Miami as well.
All right, Keith Smith covers the NBA, Yahoo Sports NBA, at Keith Smith NBA. And, I guess, we talk a lot about one reason that you can really believe in the Sixers more so than ever before is this is a different Joel Embiid. And, Keith, I have said there are 5 teams that I believe can win a title this year. One is the Lakers. They have LeBron. One is the Clippers. They have Kawhi. One is Brooklyn because they have their 3 guys. One is the Bucks because they have Giannis. And the other is the Sixers because they have Joel. I don't know that there's another player on one of these other teams, Phoenix, Utah, or other, that have a player that could be the best player on the team that wins a title. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's probably close with Phoenix because I think Chris Paul is still playing at such a high level. And then you could also see if Devin Booker goes kind of, white hot like he did in the, bubble and, plays out of his mind, you could see him get there. And then Utah, they're the classic, some is more than the whole of the parts because they just fit together so well. But you're right. Those guys you mentioned, and I would have had Denver in there with Jokic, but I'm just a little worried about their ability to create enough offense without Jamal Murray when they get into the postseason.
Let me ask you about Milwaukee and the difference between them because it's a similar team. And people like, Giannis, is he a different Giannis? Their playoff failures have come because Giannis is a very, I don't want to say limited, that's not fair, but kind of a 1 or 2 dimensional offensive player when it gets to playoff time. Has that changed? Do we feel that he has expanded his offensive game enough to carry them to that next level?
I think to some extent he has. We saw that in one of those Nets games last weekend when he was, very openly happy to take jump shot. He's hitting just under 69% from the free throw line, so a little bit better than he had been. And he's making a lot of plays as a passer. And then what that team has done completely different beyond Giannis is, one, they're playing him and Chris Middleton are both playing this year about 33 minutes a game. That may not sound like a lot, but last year they were Giannis was just at 30 and Middleton was just under 28. I think it was, or right around 28. So when it got into that playoff series in Miami, Mike Budenholzer said, I can't step these guys up to 40, 42 minutes because it's just too big of a leap. This year, he's going to be able to do that. The other thing that they've done as a whole as a team is they've taken a lot of short-term losses this year for what should be long-term gains because what they're doing is they're changing up their defenses. That's not always working on them, and they're kind of playing through it and figuring it out on the fly because this year you got to figure it out in games because there's no practice time. But I think that's going to help. They're a lot more, or let me rephrase that. They're a lot less predictable of a team than they were a year ago, and I think that's going to really pay dividends for them when they get into the postseason.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the bigger stories because, this doesn't seem to be record-wise, obviously not record-wise as good a Bucks team. But, I think we also undervalue, Keith, that Giannis was a guy that needed to lose some, he had to get knocked down and learn that he can't do it all by himself. And I feel like, we deal with it here in Philly a lot. These fans are like, because they did what they did to get Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, well, now they got to win right away. Well, no, these guys got to lose, get knocked down. And I feel like because Giannis was the MVP of the league, we almost don't give him that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think, too, in the NBA, we love a team that's on the come up. But when that team kind of gets there, if they hang around too long like the Warriors did, everybody gets sick of them and they kind of become the villain. Nobody roots against them. But we also like to tear a team down very quickly. And that's exactly the case with Milwaukee is all of a sudden it's like, yeah, but they haven't done it in the postseason, so get them out of here. I don't really care. When the reality is they barely missed the finals 2 years ago against, what ultimately ended up being the championship Raptors team. And then last year, everything just kind of fell apart on them and the wheels came off. So I'm very interested to see. I do think this is a big playoff run for them because they have to get something going. And you're right, with Philadelphia, it's kind of in the same boat. The team I cover, Boston, as well, people are frustrated because it's like, are we ever going to win, with these guys? And it's, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, all they've done is win since they've been in the NBA. And yet people are still questioning, yeah, but can they win, when it really counts? And that's just, in the NBA, there can only be one champion. And it seems more so than the other sports. We hold to, if you don't get it done, you got to move on pretty quickly, more so than we do patience-wise in the other major sports.
Yeah, let me get your take, Keith, on what the Lakers' next 2 weeks might look like here. Do they get this thing going? LeBron is healthy and ready to make the run, or are they mired in a 9-10 matchup or a 7-8 matchup next week? Or I guess it would be 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I don't think they'll fall as far as the 9-10. They've got enough of a cushion there. I don't think even they'll fall as far as past 7. They're 4 games up on the Grizzlies, which is a pretty good spread to be up by with about 7-ish games or so to play. So, but what I do think is they're going to have a battle between them, Dallas, and Portland for that 5, 6, 7 range. They're all right around the same record. Dallas and the Lakers have the same record, but Dallas has the tiebreaker. And then Lakers are a half game up on Portland. So they're going to have to win games because neither Dallas or Portland is going away. So if they're going to keep themselves out of that play-in, and what's really important with the play-in is it's not only is it, go into the play-in, because I think we'd all look at the playing field and say, all right, the Lakers should win their way into the postseason from there. It's the fact that if you get to 6, you get 5 to 6 days off, where you don't have to play while the play-in plays out, because season ends on a Sunday, and then the playoffs don't start again until the following Saturday or Sunday. So that is huge if you're the Lakers. You're not having to prep for the play-in, play your way through it, and figure out where they go. So that's really, really important. Now the challenge is LeBron just clearly isn't healthy because they're still holding him out of these games, and they're right. His health is more important than any kind of wins they can get, but their path is going to be extremely difficult for them to repeat.
Yeah, you're right about that, because if they play the Clippers tonight, they can conceivably be in the 7 spot at the end of the night tonight, and then you're in a situation where, okay, you're playing the 7-8 game. All right, you win maybe. If you lose that game, then you might have to play Golden State and have a Curry, LeBron matchup possibly to be the 8 seed, which would be wild. And so that there. But even then, all right, now you're the 8 seed or even the 7 seed. You've got to play Utah or Phoenix in round number 1. And I want to get your opinion on both of those teams and how legitimate of title contenders you think those top 4 teams in the West are right now.
Yeah, normally in a normal year, I'd have more reservations about Utah and Phoenix than usual, because kind of what we talked about before. I don't know that either one has that one guy I can trust that guy's going to carry me and lift me. But this has been such a weird season that I do think that these teams that may be built around, hey, we don't need any one guy to kind of carry us, they may be able to get there. And I think those teams are both real. I think Utah's home court advantage is a very real one, even with limited fans. It's loud there. They don't get the same publicity of the altitude that Denver does, but altitude is an issue. Now, it's less an issue when you're there for a handful of games in a row, but it does matter. And then Phoenix is just built around, they're kind of built almost more like your classic team that's good in the postseason because they can score inside and outside. They've got pretty good depth, and their role players really know what their job is and what's expected of them. Same with the Jazz's role players around Mitchell and Gobert and those kind of guys. And most importantly, they defend. Both of those teams really defend. So I think they have a real chance. I still would lean Clippers over both of them just slightly, but it's by such a margin that it's more, to me, it'll be about matchups and health than ever.
Hey, do you have any info or detail on, I know like baseball is seemingly letting you do what you want to do. The NBA is not letting teams dictate how many fans are in their arena, correct?
No, so what's happening with the NBA is they're still largely going by the local guidelines about what the local guidelines are. Like here in Florida, where I live, it has been, hey, open it up, let everybody in. Now the NBA is being more cautious than that, and they're working with their teams to say, hey, we've got to be a little bit smarter. We can't necessarily, open it up to, 1 million people and fully fill these arenas just yet. But there is some thought that pending, who it is, by the time we get deeper into the playoffs, maybe by the conference finals or the finals, we may be back to pretty full building.
Well, that would be, how much that could play a difference and a factor. I mean, if you're in Phoenix and they're the number one seed and they got a full building over there, or Philly for that matter, as opposed to playing with 3,500 people, that could really change the complexion of these playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely, especially considering we've got a handful of these teams that are in contention that they have not been there in a while. So think of how absolutely rabid their fans are going to be, and they're going to be making noise. You even watch some of these games right now, and for some of these teams, Phoenix, Utah, even the Knicks, limited amount of fans are making a ton of noise, and it's because they're for the first time they have legitimate reasons to cheer this late in the season.
Keith Smith does an outstanding job covering the NBA for Yahoo Sports at Keith Smith NBA. We are down to the final 6 games. The Sixers have a 2-game lead over the Nets, a 3-game lead over the Bucks. We, of course, don't know their first-round matchups because of this play-in tournament, but the East seemingly will be a very intriguing – about what we do know right now is it looks like the Knicks and the Hawks are likely to match up in the first round, and then everything else, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, all up for grabs, 1, 2, and 3. It looks like Philly. So we will start to break down these playoffs a little bit more when Keith joins us next week here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. All right, Keith, I look forward to these NBA playoffs. I think they're going to be really entertaining.
Yeah, you and me both. I'll leave on one quick note. Don't lock the Knicks in yet. They're in the middle of a really tough West Coast swing. They have a lot of really tough games left. So they may be a team that could slide a little bit, but we'll catch up on that next week and see where it all lays out.
Sounds good. Yes, they are 2 up. I know that Keith covers the Celtics a lot. They are 2 up on Boston for the 4th spot. So I guess you're right. If they're going out west and they've won 8 out of 10, they're playing really good basketball. And Keith Smith, of course, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.